I thought my life was quiet, safe, until him, Cyrus Darnell. The name alone made my blood run cold, ruthless, feared, untouchable, and now he was here, telling me I was his. "You're mine now," he said, and there was no question in his tone. No choice, only a claim I couldn't escape. I wanted to run. I wanted to fight, but fear and something darker, something magnetic, kept me rooted. My life, my freedom, my very world belonged to him now. Some chains, once fastened, could never be broken, and some hearts, once claimed, could never escape. The night it all began still feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. The sound of rain hitting the broken roof tiles, the smell of damp earth, and my mother's trembling hands clinging to mine while my father tried to explain something to the men in black suits. I didn't even understand what was happening until I heard his voice, deep, cold, absolute. When I looked up, I saw him, Cyrus Darnell, the kind of man who didn't need to speak loudly to make the air heavy. Everything about him was clean and sharp, his suit, his movements, even the way his eyes moved across the room like he owned everything in it. When those eyes landed on me, I couldn't breathe. My father was shaking, saying something about debts, about a mistake, about mercy. But Cyrus wasn't listening to him. He was looking at me, studying me. And then, without hesitation, he said it. "He'll do." It didn't make sense at first. I didn't understand what "he'll do" meant until Cyrus stepped closer, the rain catching in the light behind him. "You owe me more than you can ever repay," he said, "so I'll take him." The silence that followed was worse than any scream. My father didn't speak. My mother started crying. I felt their hands slip away from me as if I'd already been taken. Cyrus didn't ask me. He didn't wait for consent. His men moved forward, and I knew that if I resisted, they'd drag me anyway. Still, something in me made me speak. My voice was small, cracked, almost drowned by the thunder. "Why me?" His answer was simple. "Because you'll learn obedience." That was the last thing I heard before one of his men took my arm. I remember looking back at my parents, my mother's tearful face, my father's bowed head, and realizing this was goodbye. They put me in the back of a black car. The city blurred past through the rain-streaked windows. I tried to think of running, of escaping, but every time I looked at the man sitting across from me, Cyrus, silent, unreadable, I knew it was useless. His presence filled the car like another body, heavy and suffocating. When we reached his mansion, I stepped out and stared. It wasn't a home, it was a fortress. Iron gates, stone walls, lights that seemed too bright against the night. Inside, everything smelled expensive and unfamiliar. My shoes left faint wet marks on the marble floor as one of the guards led me down a long hallway. At the end of it, Cyrus waited. He didn't look angry. He looked calm, almost bored, as if taking someone's life away was routine. I stood there, my hands clenched, my heart pounding so loudly it hurt. "This is where you live now," he said. "You'll follow my rules, answer when I call, and never attempt to leave. In return, your family stays alive." His words were clean, final, impossible to argue with. I wanted to scream, to tell him I wasn't property. But when he took a step closer, I froze. His hand came up, not to strike me, but to touch my face. His thumb brushed under my jaw, tilting my chin up. "You're trembling," he said quietly. "Good. Fear keeps people alive." He walked away, leaving me standing there in the middle of that vast, cold hall. I didn't move for a long time. I couldn't. The sound of his footsteps echoed long after he disappeared, like a reminder that I was no longer free. That night, they locked the door from the outside. I sat on the edge of a bed that didn't feel like mine, staring at the rain through the window, and realized what kind of world I had been dragged into. A world where one man's word could decide my fate. The first morning in his mansion felt unreal. The air smelled different, clean, cold, laced with something expensive I couldn't name. I woke up before sunrise, unsure if I'd slept at all. The silence was so thick it pressed against my chest. No traffic, no neighbors, no sound of life, just emptiness. When I stepped out of the room, two men in suits were waiting. They didn't speak. didn't look at me. One of them simply nodded toward the staircase. I followed, every step echoing like a warning. The dining room was massive, chandeliers, polished wood, sunlight leaking through tall glass walls, and at the head of the table sat Cyrus. A cup of coffee rested near his hand, steam curling upward. He didn't look up when I entered, just said, "Sit." I obeyed. My body moved on instinct, though my mind screamed against it. "Eat," he said, eyes still on the document in his hand. The plate in front of me looked untouched, like it had been waiting for me. I forced myself to take a bite, though my stomach twisted. The silence stretched until he finally spoke again. "You'll have someone assigned to you," he said, "to make sure you don't get lost, to make sure you don't do something stupid." My fork paused. "I'm not planning anything." He looked up then, slow, deliberate, his gray eyes cutting right through me. "Good, because plans don't matter here. Only obedience does." I dropped my gaze. The weight of his stare burned against my skin. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. There was a calm kind of violence in the way he spoke. When breakfast ended, one of his men escorted me to another room, smaller, quieter, overlooking the courtyard. "You'll stay here until you're told otherwise," he said, before locking the door behind me. For hours, I sat there, staring at the sunlight crawling across the floor. Every minute that passed felt heavier. I didn't even know how to process what had happened. Was I really married now? To him? It didn't feel real. Not until evening, when the door opened again. He entered alone. No guards, no warning, just him, filling the room with his quiet dominance. I stood automatically, my heart racing. He walked closer, slow, deliberate. "Do you hate me yet?" he asked. I froze. The question wasn't mocking. It sounded genuine. Curious, even. I swallowed. "You ruined my life," I said. "I saved it," he replied, no hesitation in his voice. "You'd all be dead by now if I hadn't intervened. So tell me, is living in my house worse than dying on the street?" His words hit me like a slap. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to scream that being alive like this wasn't living at all. But nothing came out. He stepped closer, until I could smell the faint scent of his cologne, something dark and clean, like smoke and rain. His hand lifted, and I flinched, but he didn't touch me. His fingers hovered near my face, then dropped. "I don't break what belongs to me," he said quietly. "Not unless it disobeys." My throat tightened. "I'm not an object." His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "You're right. You're not. You're a promise. One that I intend to keep." He turned away and left without another word, the sound of the lock sliding into place echoing behind him. I sat on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, staring at the closed door. My body was trembling again, but it wasn't just fear this time. It was something else, something I didn't want to name. The worst part was realizing how his voice still lingered in my head, how his presence stayed even after he was gone. And I hated that part of me didn't just fear him. Part of me already belonged to him. A world where I belonged to Cyrus Darnell. Night came too soon, dragging its silence through the long halls of his mansion. I had been left alone for hours, pacing from wall to wall, afraid to touch anything, afraid to breathe too loudly. The moonlight leaked through the tall windows, pale and cold, and I caught my reflection in the glass. Small, lost, wearing clothes I didn't recognize. I looked like someone else, someone owned. The door opened without warning. He didn't knock. He never did. Cyrus walked in, sleeves rolled up, the faint scent of smoke clinging to him. He looked tired, though no less dangerous. His presence swallowed the room, made the air feel heavier. "I told them not to lock your door tonight," he said simply, closing it behind him. I swallowed. "Why?" He looked at me like the question itself amused him. "Because I wanted to see if you'd run." I took a step back, heart pounding. Would it matter if I did? No. He took a step closer. "Because you wouldn't get far. And because I'd bring you back." His words weren't shouted. They were low, steady, certain. That made them worse. He didn't threaten, he promised. When he stopped in front of me, his hand came up. My body tensed. But he didn't hurt me. His thumb brushed just under my jaw, forcing me to meet his eyes. "You keep flinching," he said quietly, "but you don't look away." "I'm afraid," I whispered. He tilted his head slightly. "No, you're curious." The way he said it made my pulse quicken. I hated that he was right. I hated that part of me, wanted to understand him. He stepped even closer, and I could feel his breath against my cheek. "You'll get used to this," he murmured. "The house, the rules, me." "I won't," I said, though my voice trembled. He gave a small hum, not quite a laugh. "You will. Everyone does." He turned then, walking toward the window. The moonlight caught the sharp line of his jaw, the faint scar near his neck. For the first time, I noticed he looked human. Just a man, staring out into the darkness. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Doing this to people?" He didn't answer for a while. Then, softly, "Regret is a weakness. Weakness gets you killed." He looked back at me. His eyes had softened, not with kindness, but with something unreadable. "You'll learn that soon enough." When he left, he didn't lock the door. I stood there, staring at it for a long time. I could have run. I could have tried, but I didn't. Something about the quiet he left behind, the ghost of his touch under my jaw, kept me frozen. And for the first time, I realized the truth that scared me most. I wasn't trapped because of his guards. I was trapped because part of me didn't want to leave. The following morning arrived with the dull echo of footsteps outside my room. I had barely slept. The mattress felt foreign, the silence unnatural. When the door opened again, a woman in black entered. She was older, stern, and her expression didn't soften, even when she bowed slightly. "Mr. Cyrus asked me to prepare you," she said flatly. "The ceremony will be in 3 days." Her words hit me like ice. "Ceremony?" She didn't answer, just placed folded clothes on the bed, a white shirt and a black suit. "You're to be fitted today." My throat went dry. "He's serious, isn't he?" The woman gave me a look that almost resembled pity. "He always is." Hours later, I was brought downstairs. The mansion seemed even larger in daylight, all marble and silence, the kind of beauty that made you feel small. Cyrus was there, standing near the grand piano, sleeves rolled up again, his hand wrapped around a glass of whiskey, though it was barely noon. His eyes found me immediately. "You look awake now." "I wasn't sleeping," I muttered. He set the glass down and walked toward me, every step deliberate. "You should. You'll need your strength." "For what? Running away again?" He stopped right in front of me. "For belonging." I flinched. "You can't just—" He cut me off with a look. "You think I don't know what I'm doing, Callan? You think I haven't thought this through? I could have had anyone, but I wanted you." "That's not love," I said quietly. "I never said it was." His tone was sharp, unyielding. "This isn't about love. It's about keeping what's mine." His words burned through me, equal parts anger, and something else I didn't want to name. "Why me?" I asked. "You don't even know me." He leaned closer, his voice low, dangerous. "I know enough. I know you tried to destroy one of my deals. I know you were foolish enough to think you could disappear. And I know the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching." My heart stuttered. He noticed that? His mouth twitched, not a smile, but something darker. "You intrigue me, Callan. You hate me, but you can't stop looking." I wanted to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. His presence filled the space, soaked into my skin like heat. He straightened, turning away. "Get ready for the ceremony. Once it's done, you'll have my name, my protection, my world." "And if I refuse?" Cyrus paused, then looked over his shoulder. "You won't." That night, I sat by the window again, staring out at the iron gates beyond the courtyard. Guards stood there, motionless. Escape wasn't impossible, but it felt meaningless. Because even if I got out, I knew Cyrus would find me. And worse, I didn't know if I wanted him not to. 3 days passed faster than I expected. Each sunrise bled into the next, and before I knew it, I was being dressed in black. The sound of thunder echoing faintly outside. The air smelled of rain and roses. Strange, considering it wasn't a real wedding. It wasn't love, it was control. Still, as they led me through the candlelit hall, I felt my pulse race like it was something sacred. The guests were silent, mostly men in tailored suits, faces carved from shadow. Cyrus stood at the far end, beside a priest who looked more terrified than holy. His gaze found mine instantly, sharp, possessive, like a hand tightening around my throat. I wanted to look away. I didn't. When I stopped in front of him, he didn't say a word. His hand came up, brushing a stray strand of hair from my forehead, his touch almost gentle. The contrast made it worse. How someone so ruthless could touch me like that, as if I were something fragile. "Do you, Callan, take—" "I don't," I whispered, before the priest can finish. The room froze. A few guards shifted. The priest's voice died. Cyrus's expression didn't change. Only his eyes darkened, a warning flickering beneath the surface. He leaned closer, close enough that only I could hear him. "Say it," he said softly. "Don't test me here." My hands trembled. "You can't make me love you." He smiled. Slow, devastating. "Love isn't required." The priest stuttered, continuing the vows, and I barely heard myself say the words. It felt unreal, mechanical, my voice hollow. But when the ring slid onto my finger, his ring, something shifted inside me. The sound of applause was muted. Far away. Cyrus's fingers brushed the back of my neck as he leaned in to whisper, "Now you're mine." That night, the mansion was silent again. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the mark of the ring against my skin. It felt heavier than metal, like a chain disguised as gold. When he entered, I didn't look up. "Are you proud of yourself?" I asked quietly. "For forcing this?" He crossed the room and stood behind me, his reflection appearing in the mirror beside mine. "I've done worse," he said finally. "That's not an answer." He met my eyes in the mirror. "You'll understand one day. Why I chose you. Why I couldn't let you go." "Because you're obsessed," I spat. He smiled, faintly. "Maybe. But obsession keeps things alive." When his hand touched my shoulder, I felt every nerve in my body react. I hated it, the way my skin burned under his touch, the way part of me wanted him closer. He leaned down, his breath brushing my ear. "You can hate me all you want, but you'll never escape me." Then, softer, almost a whisper I wasn't supposed to hear. "I wouldn't survive if you did." That night after he left, I touched the ring again. It glimmered under the faint light, beautiful and cruel. And I realized the truth that terrified me most. Some cages are built so perfectly, you forget they're meant to trap you. Days turned into weeks, and the mansion grew quieter, or maybe I was just getting used to its silence. Every sound, every whisper of wind through the long curtains, every faint echo of footsteps in the hall, it all began to feel like him. Cyrus didn't lock me away anymore. He didn't have to. His presence lingered everywhere. In the smell of his cologne on my sheets, the shadow that crossed my mind whenever I closed my eyes. I ate breakfast in the grand dining hall, alone, most mornings. The guards watched from a distance, pretending not to, until one day, he came again. He never announced himself, just walked in, like the world was his to command. "You're avoiding me," he said simply, pulling out the chair beside mine. I kept my gaze on the plate. "I thought you'd prefer it that way." "I don't." His tone made my fingers tighten around the fork. "Why?" "You already have what you wanted." He leaned back, studying me with unreadable calm. "Do I?" The question hit deeper than I wanted it to. I looked at him then, really looked, at the faint darkness under his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers tapped against the table. "Why do you look like you haven't slept in days?" I asked before I could stop myself. Cyrus smiled faintly. "Maybe because my husband keeps running from me in his mind." "I'm not your husband," I muttered. "You wear my ring. That doesn't make it real." He reached out suddenly, his hand closing around mine, and I froze. His grip wasn't harsh. It was steady, grounding, and somehow worse than violence. "Then make it real," he said quietly. I looked up, confused. "What?" "Stay. Stop fighting it. Stop pretending you don't feel something when I'm near." "I don't." He cut me off, leaning closer. "You do." The silence that followed was suffocating. His eyes searched mine, and I could see it. The dangerous mix of control and desperation. The way he needed me to say it, even if it was a lie. "I can't," I whispered, finally. "You took everything from me." He didn't flinch. He just sighed softly, letting go of my hand. "And yet you're still here." That night, I walked out to the balcony, the cold wind biting my skin. Below, the city lights stretched endlessly, far beyond the walls that held me captive. Behind me, I heard the soft click of the door. "I thought you were asleep," I said without turning. "I don't sleep much," he murmured, stepping closer. "Not when you're this far away." He came to stand beside me, faint scent of whiskey and rain mixing with the night air. "Why me, Cyrus?" I asked again, voice breaking this time. "There are thousands of people in your world. Why me?" He looked at the city, then at me. "Because you didn't fear me the first time you saw me. Everyone else trembles when I enter a room, but you looked at me like I was human." "I was a fool," I whispered. "Maybe," he said softly, "but you made me want to be something I've never been." He reached out slowly, his fingers brushing my face. And though I wanted to move away, I couldn't. His touch was too careful, too fragile for the monster he was supposed to be. "Callan," he said my name like a confession. "You don't have to love me, but don't hate me either." The rain started to fall then, slow, cold drops that clung to his lashes, to mine. And in that moment, for the first time, I saw the man behind the cruelty. The one who built his empire out of blood and fear, but still looked at me like I was the only thing worth saving. And maybe that was the cruelest part of all. The morning after the rain, the house smelled of smoke and cold marble. The world outside was gray, but inside it was quieter than ever. Cyrus had left early. At least, that's what I thought until I went downstairs and saw him sitting by the fire, a glass untouched in his hand, the flames painting his face in uneven light. He didn't look up when I entered. "You're awake. You didn't sleep," I said softly. His lips twitched. "You're observant." I walked closer, hesitant but curious. "You look different today." He turned his head slightly, his eyes heavy with something I hadn't seen before. "Regret. There was a raid last night. One of my men didn't make it." For the first time, his voice sounded human. Fragile, and I didn't know what to do with that. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He looked at me like the words hurt him more than comforted. "Don't be. Death follows me, it always has." He set the glass down, then stood, moving toward me. His footsteps were slow, deliberate. I didn't back away this time. "You said once that I took everything from you," he murmured. "But the truth is, you've taken everything from me too." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "You took my peace." He stopped right in front of me. "You took the quiet in my head. You ruined me, Callan." My heart beat faster, unsure whether it was fear or something else. "You're saying that like it's my fault." "It is." His voice softened, dangerous and tender all at once. "Because now I can't breathe when you're not near me." He raised a hand, fingers brushing my cheek, tracing the line of my jaw like he was memorizing it. "You've become my weakness, and I don't have the strength to fight it." "Then let me go," I whispered. He smiled, faint and broken. "I can't." That night, thunder rolled again, distant but deep. I couldn't sleep, so I wandered through the halls until I found myself outside his office. The door was ajar, light spilling through the crack. He was on the phone, his tone clipped, cold. The man I'd seen earlier, the one who mourned, was gone. In his place stood the ruthless Mafia king again. "Make sure he never breathes again," Cyrus said quietly, ending the call with frightening calm. The words twisted my stomach. I took a step back, but the floor creaked under my foot. His head snapped up instantly. "Talon?" I froze. He walked to the door, opening it fully. His expression softened the moment he saw me. "Couldn't sleep?" I shook my head. You just ordered someone to die." He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "You weren't supposed to hear that." "That doesn't make it disappear," I said, voice trembling. "How can you say you care for me when you still do things like this?" He met my gaze, his jaw tightening. "Because this world doesn't stop for love." "Then maybe you shouldn't have dragged me into it," I whispered. He stared at me for a long moment, then took a slow step forward. "Maybe. But now that you're in it, I'll burn the world before I lose you." Later, when I finally lay in bed, his words haunted me more than the thunder. I used to think he'd trapped me with power, but the truth was darker. He'd trapped me with devotion. And somewhere deep inside, where I didn't want to look, a part of me had already started to fall. It had been a month since the ceremony. The mansion no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a ghost that had learned to breathe beside me, The same halls that once suffocated me now whispered with an unsettling familiarity. I told myself I was waiting for a chance to escape, but every night that I didn't try, that lie grew thinner. Cyrus had stopped forcing me to see him. He'd stopped ordering me to stay in the same room or eat at his table. And somehow, that distance was worse, because when he wasn't near, I couldn't stop thinking about him. In this late evening, when the calm shattered, I was in the library, trying to read, when one of his men stormed in. "Mr. Callan, you need to come now. Boss, he's been shot." The book slipped from my hands. "What?" "Ambush, he's in his office." My legs moved before my mind did. The moment I pushed open the heavy doors, I saw the chaos blood streaked across the floor, shattered glass glittering under dim lights. Cyrus sat slumped in a chair, his shirt soaked crimson. His breathing was shallow, labored. I froze. "Cyrus," his head tilted toward me, a faint smirk pulling at his lips. "Don't look at me like that, it's just a scratch." It wasn't. The blood wouldn't stop. My heart clenched as I knelt beside him, pressing a trembling hand against the wound. "Don't talk," I said, my voice breaking. Just stay still." His hand caught mine weakly, his grip still impossibly strong even in pain. "You're crying." I hadn't realized until then that I was. "Why didn't you run?" he murmured, his breath uneven. "Because the words caught in my throat. "Because I couldn't." His eyes softened, dark and fading. "That's enough." The doctor rushed in then, pulling me back. I stood frozen, watching as they worked, blood everywhere, the sound of him gasping filling the room. Hours later, when the chaos settled, the doctor came to me quietly. "He'll live. The bullet missed the artery, but he asked for you." I hesitated outside his room for a long time before entering. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and whiskey. He was lying on the bed, shirtless, bandaged, eyes half open. "Still here," he rasped. "You should be resting." He smiled weakly. "If I close my eyes, you'll vanish." "Don't be stupid," I muttered, sitting beside him. "Maybe I am." He turned his head toward me, his voice softer now. "You stayed, even when you had the chance." I couldn't look at him. "You're impossible to leave behind." His fingers brushed mine, light, hesitant. "Then don't." I looked at him then, at the man who'd stolen my freedom, and somehow, without warning, my heart. "You'll never change," I whispered. "I don't need to," he said with a tired smile. "I just need you to stop trying to hate me." That night, I stayed by his side. The rain came again, tapping softly against the windows. His hand found mine in his sleep, holding it like something fragile, something he couldn't afford to lose. And for the first time, I didn't pull away. Because maybe, just maybe, I didn't want to. The storm lasted through the night, and by morning, the whole mansion smelled of damp marble and smoke from the fireplaces. Cyrus hadn't woken yet, though the doctor said he would. I sat beside him in the dim light, listening to the slow, steady beat of the rain against the glass. When his eyes finally opened, the first thing he did was find me. His voice was rough, barely a whisper. "You stayed." "I wasn't going to let you die alone," I said quietly. He gave a tired laugh that turned into a cough. "You say that like you were worried." "I wasn't." "Liar." He closed his eyes again, but his hand reached out, searching until it found mine. I didn't pull away. His palm was warm, despite the cold in the room. "I meant what I said that night," he murmured. "If you ever tried to leave again, I'd follow, but maybe not to keep you prisoner." "Then why?" "To make sure you'd come back on your own." I looked at him, unsure how to respond. "You think you can fix what you did just by saying things like that?" "No," he said, "but I can try to be someone worth staying for." The next few days blurred together. Cyrus was confined to bed, which meant the mansion slowed down, quieter than ever. For the first time, I saw the people who worked for him, not as guards or servants, but as men who depended on him. One night, when the house had gone silent, I found myself standing in his doorway again. He was awake, sitting up with a book in his lap, the glow from the lamp soft on his face. "You should sleep," he said without looking up. I couldn't. He set the book aside, eyes on me now. "You used to flinch when you saw me." "I still do sometimes." "Not tonight." I took a slow breath and walked closer. "Maybe because for once, you're not trying to control me." "I never wanted to control you, Callan." "Then what did you want?" He hesitated. "To be seen." The honesty in his voice left me silent. He reached out again, fingers brushing against mine, a silent question. I didn't move away. You're the only one who ever looked at me without fear, he whispered, even when I gave you every reason to. Maybe because I saw something human left in you, I said softly, and maybe that's why I couldn't let you go. The space between us disappeared slowly, like a wave pulling us together after too long resisting the tide. He leaned forward, his forehead resting against mine. His voice trembled when he spoke. I don't deserve you. I know, I whispered back, but right now, I don't care. His breath hitched, his hand tightened around mine. For once, there were no commands, no chains, just warmth and exhaustion, and something that almost felt like peace. When I woke the next morning, he was still holding my hand, his grip soft but certain. And in that moment, I realized that even if I ever left, a part of me would always remain here, in this room, with him, in the quiet, between the thunder and the morning light. Days passed, and slowly, Cyrus began to heal. His movements were steadier, his voice deeper again, his presence returning to that same quiet dominance. But something in him had shifted. The edges weren't as sharp anymore. The monster had learned silence. He no longer commanded me to eat with him. He asked. He no longer demanded my attention. He waited for it. And that was far more dangerous than anything he'd done before. Because when someone like him softened, even just a little, you couldn't help but fall. I found him one evening on the terrace, dressed in black, watching the sun fade behind the horizon. He didn't turn when I approached, but his voice was calm when he spoke. You're not afraid of me anymore. I still am, I admitted. Just not in the same way. He gave a faint smile, eyes on the dying light. I should have let you go when I had the chance. Then why didn't you? Because letting go of you felt like dying. His honesty hit harder than any threat he'd ever made. I looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time, I saw the cracks. The man who built an empire out of blood was crumbling quietly from the inside. Cyrus, I said softly, you can't keep living like this. You can't keep killing and expect something pure to grow from it. He turned toward me, his gaze heavy with a sadness I hadn't seen before. Then tell me what to do, Callan. Tell me how to stop. Start by not lying to yourself. He laughed under his breath, broken, almost bitter. You really think I can change? I don't know, I said. But I think you already are. That night, after dinner, he surprised me by taking me somewhere I hadn't been before, a locked room at the end of the West Wing. Inside, it wasn't filled with weapons or money. It was filled with paintings, dozens of them, most unfinished. Some dark, some soft, all of them painted by his hand. You paint? I asked quietly. Not anymore. Why? Because I stopped having something to feel for. My eyes drifted over the canvas in front, a portrait of a man with eyes that looked hauntingly like mine. When did you make this? I whispered. The day I met you. I turned toward him, heartbeat loud in my ears. Why? Because I wanted to remember the moment I stopped being untouchable. He stepped closer then, slow and deliberate, his hand lifting to rest against my face. His touch wasn't rough this time. It was trembling, desperate, careful. I hurt you, he said, his voice breaking. I took away your choice. But if you asked me now, I'd give you everything, even if it meant losing you. I felt my chest tighten. You mean that? He nodded once. For you, I'd burn it all. When I went to sleep that night, his words echoed inside me like a curse, the kind that didn't heal you, but refused to let you drown alone. The following weeks slipped by like smoke, slow, suffocating, and strangely tender. Cyrus had changed. Not all at once, not in the ways the world would notice, but in the small moments that mattered. He no longer touched me without asking. He no longer ordered me to stay, and yet, I stayed anyway. It was late one night when I found him again in his office. The same room that used to make me flinch. Now, it only felt heavy, like it remembered too much. He was sitting at the desk, shirt half unbuttoned, the glow of a single lamp catching the lines of exhaustion on his face. Couldn't sleep again? I asked quietly. He didn't look up. I never do. The world doesn't stop because I close my eyes. Maybe it should, I murmured. He smiled faintly at that, a weary, almost broken smile. You make it sound so easy. I walked closer, leaning against the edge of the desk. You make it sound impossible. He finally looked at me then, and I saw it, That same darkness, but softer now. Like the night learning to breathe again after years of fire. I don't know what this is between us anymore, he said, voice low. It started as a cage, but now every time you walk away, I can't breathe. I swallowed hard. That's not love, Cyrus. I know. His gaze dropped. It's something worse. The silence between us burned hotter than any fight we'd ever had. I wanted to say something, to end this madness, but instead, I found myself reaching for him. My hand brushed his cheek, and he froze, as if afraid I'd disappear. You could start over, I whispered. You could be more than this. He turned into my touch, eyes closing. Only if you stay. The next morning. The house woke to chaos. One of his men burst into the dining room mid-breakfast. Boss, it's the rival family. They're moving against us. Cyrus stood immediately, the calm in his movements sharper than fear. Get everyone ready. I grabbed his wrist before he could leave. You're still healing. He shook his head. This is my world, Callan. If I don't fight, they'll come for you next. The look in his eyes made my stomach twist. It wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. The kind that comes from a man ready to die. Don't do this, I said, my voice trembling. He cupped my face suddenly, pulling me close enough to feel the heat of his breath. If anything happens to me, don't. I cut him off, shaking my head. Don't say that. He smiled softly. Then promise me something. What? Don't stop living, even if I'm gone. End of quote. He left before I could answer. The hours that followed stretched into eternity. Gunfire echoing in the distance. Shouts, engines, then silence. When the doors finally opened, the men dragged him back inside, bloodied, bruised, alive, barely. I fell to my knees beside him. Cyrus. He coughed, his blood staining my hands. Told you I'd come back. Tears blurred my vision as I pressed my palms against the wound. You're such an idiot. He smiled, weak but real. Maybe, but I came back to you. His fingers brushed my cheek, smearing red across my skin, and his voice dropped to a whisper. I'm done with this life, Callan. I don't want an empire anymore. I just want you. That night, as the world outside fell silent again, I sat beside him, my hand in his. His body trembled under the weight of pain, but for the first time, he looked peaceful. And somewhere, between the fear and the blood, I realized the truth. He hadn't forced me to stay this time. I had chosen to, because somehow the man who ruined my life had become the only one I couldn't live without. Days passed, and Cyrus began to recover. The mansion was quieter now, the halls no longer filled with his men's harsh voices or the echoes of violence. It almost felt like peace, though we both knew it wasn't meant to last. He spent most of his time in the garden lately, where the old fountain stood, broken, waterless, but still standing. I often found him there, lost in thought, staring at nothing. When I brought him coffee one morning, he glanced up, his usual coldness gone. You're up early. You should drink something, I said softly, handing him the cup. He took it but didn't drink. Instead, he studied me for a long moment. You look different. Do I? He nodded slowly, calmer. Like you finally stopped running from me. Maybe I did, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. Something flickered in his eyes. Something warm, dangerous, tender. Then let me ask you something, Callan. If I hadn't forced you to stay that night, would you have ever come back? The question hit me like a storm. I didn't answer right away because I didn't know the truth myself. But after a while, I said quietly, maybe not, but I'm here now. His hand brushed against mine, just barely. Then that's enough. Weeks turned into months. The city healed from the war, and so did we, in our strange, broken way. One night, as the wind howled outside, I woke to nausea twisting in my gut. I barely made it to the bathroom before throwing up. My reflection looked pale, exhausted. It wasn't the first time this had happened lately. At first I ignored it, but when the days stretched on and the sickness didn't fade, something in me began to tremble. I went to the doctor in secret, not wanting Cyrus to worry. When the doctor returned with the report, her expression was gentle but shocked. Callan, you're pregnant. The world tilted. I couldn't breathe. The words didn't make sense. Not here. Not in this world that thrived on blood and control. Are you sure? I whispered. She nodded. Completely. That night, I sat alone in the dark, one hand resting unconsciously over my stomach. I should have been terrified, but all I could think about was Cyrus, the man who once shattered me and somehow became the only thing holding me together. When he walked in and saw me like that, he froze. What's wrong? I looked up at him, heart pounding. Cyrus, I went to the doctor today. He frowned, concern tightening his features. Are you sick? I shook my head. Tears burned behind my eyes as I whispered. No, I'm pregnant. He went still. Completely still. The silence stretched for what felt like eternity. Then, slowly he knelt in front of me. His hands trembled when they reached for mine. You're serious? I nodded, tears spilling freely now. For the first time since I'd met him, Cyrus, the ruthless, untouchable Mafia boss, broke. His lips parted as a shuddered breath escaped him, his eyes glassy with disbelief and something deeper, purer. He pressed his forehead against my stomach, his voice breaking. After everything I've done, you still gave me this. I ran my fingers through his hair, my chest tightening painfully. It's not about forgiveness, Cyrus. It just happened. He looked up, eyes wet. Then I swear, I'll never let anything happen to either of you. And in that moment, for the first time, I believed him. Cyrus didn't leave my side for days after that. The mansion, once filled with the shadow of his empire, now felt strangely alive, filled with the quiet rhythm of something new, fragile, and ours. He helped me walk through the halls slowly, carefully, never letting me overexert myself. Every glance he gave me, every touch he allowed, was laced with a protective intensity I had never seen before. You're carrying my child, he murmured one night as we sat in the library, the rain tapping softly against the windows. Do you know what that means? I looked up, tired, my hand resting over the growing curve of my stomach. I think I do. He ran a hand over mine, eyes dark and serious. It means I can't fail you. Not this time. Not ever. I swallowed hard. You won't. His lips pressed against my forehead, gentle, almost reverent. I'll keep you both alive. No one will ever hurt you. Not me, not them, not anyone. I wanted to laugh, bitter and relieved at once. Not even you? His grin was faint, sharp and full of heat, especially me. Weeks later, the mansion felt warmer than it had in years. Guards were still around, yes, but their sharpness seemed unnecessary now. Cyrus had learned to step back, to let the walls breathe. One evening he led me to the West Wing, the part of the house I hadn't explored much. There, in the faint candlelight, was a nursery, small, carefully arranged, decorated with soft blankets and wooden toys. I froze. You did this? I asked. I did, he said quietly, almost shyly. I want you to see it, to know that this is our world too, not just mine anymore. Tears blurred my vision. It's perfect. He took my hand, holding it against his chest. No, you're perfect, both of you. And for the first time, I didn't argue. I just let the warmth of his arms, of his promise, wash over me. The months passed and my body changed. Cyrus never left me, never let me forget the fragility of what we had, the life growing inside me. The man who had once forced me into his world, but now was fighting to make it ours. One night, he sat beside me on the balcony, the moon reflecting in his eyes. He didn't speak at first. He just watched the stars, quiet, as if afraid to disturb the fragile calm. I never thought I'd be like this, he said finally, voice low, almost afraid. Soft, responsible, afraid. I leaned against him. You're human, Cyrus. You always were. He laughed softly, brushing my hair back. I never wanted to be, not until you. I pressed my hand against my stomach. And now? Now, he said, lips brushing my temple. I'll do anything to protect you both, even if it means destroying everything else I've built. The wind carried his words into the night, mingling with the faint sound of the city below. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying and wonderful. We had survived, not as prisoners, not as enemies, but as something far more dangerous, as a family. A ruthless mafia boss, a man who had once ruled through fear, now willing to surrender his empire for us. And I had surrendered too. Not out of fear, not out of coercion, but because I wanted to stay. Always. Because some chains, once broken, were replaced not by freedom, but by love. The night my contractions began, the entire mansion trembled in chaos. Cyrus was the first to react, calm, composed, but his eyes were blazing with panic beneath the surface. He ordered the guards away, dismissed the maids, and carried me himself to the bedroom, whispering my name like a prayer. "It's okay," he murmured, his voice shaking as he brushed the sweat off my forehead. "You're going to be okay, Callan. You both will." I clutched his hand, breath ragged. "Cyrus, I can't—" "You can," he said fiercely. "You survived me. You can survive anything." The pain was unbearable, waves crashing through me until the world blurred. I only heard his voice, steady, trembling, desperate. He didn't leave me for a single second. Hours later, as dawn broke and the first cry filled the room, I saw Cyrus fall silent, completely still. He stared at the tiny wriggling life in the nurse's arms, his eyes glistening with disbelief. When the nurse placed the baby in his hands, he held him like something divine, terrified, reverent, trembling. The child was small, quiet, with eyes that flickered open, catching the faintest trace of gold, mine and his. Cyrus looked at me then, his lips parting, voice breaking. "He looks like you." I smiled weakly, exhausted. "He looks like both of us." He sat beside me, lowering the baby carefully into my arms, his hand cupping the back of my neck as he whispered, "I never thought I'd live to see something so pure." Tears blurred my vision as I stared at the tiny face. "What will we name him?" Cyrus hesitated, then said softly, "Lucian, it means light." I nodded. "Lucian." He pressed his forehead against mine, his voice trembling. "You gave me light, Callan. You gave me something I didn't deserve." I smiled faintly. "Then spend the rest of your life deserving it." The following weeks were quiet, almost peaceful. Cyrus was different now. He still held power, still commanded his empire, but it was softer around the edges. He kept Lucian close, rarely letting anyone else touch him. I'd catch him at night, standing over the crib, brushing a hand over our son's tiny fist with a look I'd never seen before, a look that belonged to a man who had finally found something he couldn't lose. Sometimes, when I watched him like that, I remembered who he used to be. A ruthless mafia boss who took me, forced me into his world, chained me to his side. And yet, here he was, whispering lullabies in the dark, swearing quietly that no harm would ever reach our child. One evening, as the sunset painted the sky crimson, Cyrus pulled me close on the balcony. The city below glowed, distant and unaware. "I've been thinking," he murmured, "about leaving this life behind." I turned to him, startled. "You? Leaving the Mafia?" He smiled faintly. When he pulled back, his voice was low, certain. "You saved me, Callan. In a world built on violence, you gave me a reason to live. And now, you've given me a reason to stop." I smiled through the tears. "Then let's stop together." He pressed a hand over mine, over the faint heartbeat of the child sleeping inside. Together, always. And for the first time, the world didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like home. Years passed, and peace, a word I never believed in, slowly became our truth. Cyrus kept his promise. He didn't vanish from the underworld. A man like him could never fully disappear. But he changed the rules. The blood, the fear, the constant war. He dismantled them, piece by piece, replacing the chaos with something he called balance. People still whispered his name, still feared him. But those who knew him now, who saw the way he held our son, the way he looked at me, they feared him for something else entirely. Because Cyrus, the man who once destroyed everything, had found something worth protecting. Lucian grew fast. He had my eyes and his father's quiet fire. He was gentle but sharp, calm but dangerous in the way he observed everything. Sometimes when he looked at me, I saw Cyrus's expression, that unreadable, calculating stillness, and it scared me how much he carried of him. One afternoon, I found them both in the garden, Cyrus sitting beneath the willow tree, Lucian perched on his lap, small hands clutching a toy gun that Cyrus had made harmless. "Why don't you ever smile, Papa?" Lucian asked innocently. Cyrus chuckled softly, brushing a hand through his son's hair. "I do, just not for everyone." "Then who do you smile for?" Cyrus looked up then, catching my gaze across the garden. The corner of his mouth curved, slow and soft, only for the ones who saved me. Lucian turned to look at me and grinned, as if he understood. That's Mama. Cyrus nodded. Yes, that's Mama. Later that night, after Lucien had fallen asleep, I found Cyrus standing by the window, smoke curling from the cigarette in his hand. You shouldn't smoke here, I murmured. He'll smell it. He stubbed it out instantly, as if caught doing something shameful. Old habits die hard. So do old scars, I said quietly, stepping behind him, wrapping my arms around his waist. He rested a hand over mine, breathing out slowly. Sometimes I still wake up thinking I'll lose all of this. You, him, everything, that someone will take it from me. No one will, I whispered. You built this peace yourself, Cyrus. You earned it. He turned around, cupping my face gently. His touch, once possessive, was now protective, reverent. No, Callan, you earned it. You were the only thing that ever made me want to change. His lips brushed mine, soft, slow, lingering. When I first saw you, I thought I wanted to own you. But what I didn't know was that you'd end up owning me. I smiled against his mouth. You still talk like a sinner begging for mercy. He chuckled lowly. Maybe I am. I looked up at him, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. Still sharp, still dangerous, but softer than I ever thought possible. Then I'll be your mercy, Cyrus. Just like you became mine. When morning came, I woke to sunlight spilling through the curtains, Lucian curled between us, his tiny hand clutching Cyrus's finger. For a moment, time felt still. Cyrus stirred awake, his voice low, rough from sleep. You're staring. I'm memorizing, I whispered. He smiled faintly, pressing a kiss to Lucian's head, then to mine. Then remember this. I may have forced fate's hand once, Cowan, but this... He looked around, his voice thick with quiet awe. This was never about power. This was about you. My eyes burned as I whispered, and you were always meant to find me. He chuckled, eyes soft. You were my punishment and my salvation. Lucy stirred, mumbling in his sleep, and Cyrus's arms instinctively tightened around us. The man who once commanded armies now held his entire world in his hands, fragile, peaceful, real. And as the morning sun touched his face, I realized something I hadn't dared to believe. The ruthless Mafia who forced me into his world didn't destroy me. He rebuilt himself through me. And maybe that was the most dangerous kind of love of all.